how long has that been sitting there? Days, weeks, months, years, decades. It's stored there until you balance it. In all probability, you've had a moment in your life where you felt shame or guilt. Shame is when you assume that you have done some action or not done some action that led to you having within yourself more drawbacks and benefits, more loss than gain, more negative than positive, more disadvantage than advantage. And guilt is when you assume that you've done an action or inaction that has led to somebody else's having more losses and gains, more negative than positives. Both of these are self-depreciative. And both of them lead to symptoms in your life. And some of the symptoms of the shame and guilt that's accumulated sometimes shows up in the form of overconsumption in the sense of food. Sometimes it's overconsumption in shopping to feel better about yourself, living vicariously through other people's brands to feel better about yourself. Or maybe it's just an altruistic act where you sacrifice for others because you devalue yourself to try to feel better about yourself, giving things. These are all signs of it. But if we go in and we diminish ourselves with shame and guilt, we're holding ourselves back from our magnificence. And we're making an assumption that there's been a drawback without a benefit, which isn't really true. We've all had a moment in our life where somebody's done something we thought was terrible. And then a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we look back and go, oh, thank God that occurred. I'm very grateful for that occurring now. I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. Well, you could have seen it then if you knew the right questions, but you didn't. And now you look back and go, wow. Well, the same thing in your behavior. Some of your behaviors you go around and carrying guilt and shame about, but you're not seeing how it serves. And as long as you don't, you're going to wallow in that and hold that back and then compensate with this overconsumption or over supposed altruistic behavior. I always say altruism is a compensation for shame and guilt of the past and a hidden agenda of the future. Because when I actually break it down, I find out there's usually hidden agendas of the future of what they want, or they're doing something to feel better about themselves after feeling shame and guilt of the past. So if you have it, it's wise to stop and make a list of anything you would not want anybody to know about. Anything in your life that you've done or not done that you feel ashamed or guilty about. Make a list, do an inventory. This is really revealing because you don't even realize you're sitting there and storing those things sometimes. They're just buried because sometimes you do it and then you get busy with something else and you just bury it inside you. And this does lead to also some of the autoimmune reactions. The autoimmunity is basically self-attack, and we're self-attacking because we got shame and guilt sometimes. So taking the time to clear that is to your advantage. It helps your health. It helps you save some money. It helps you not sacrifice for others. If you're in business, that can undermine your business and your profit margins when you have stored shame and guilt. So first, make a list of everything you might feel ashamed and guilt about. Anything that you wouldn't want anybody to know about, make a list. At least it's time for you to be aware of it. I've gone through a whole bunch of those in my own life and sat down and then asked a really amazing question. In the Breakthrough Experience program, which I've been teaching for almost 35 years, I have a specific science on how to dissolve shame and guilt. I'll give you a bit of it today. There's no way I can do it all in this short period of time, but I'll just give you the highlight of it. Whenever you're feeling shame and guilt, you're making an assumption that you have done something that's caused more problems and benefits and more drawbacks and benefits. And that's not true. There's always two sides to an event. Whatever you've done's got two sides. So first make a list of everything you've done that you think somehow you feel guilty about because you've affected somebody else, or shame about because you affected yourself. And then after you made that list and be thorough about it, till everything you can think of that shame and guilt consciously at least. There'll be unconscious stuff that'll come up maybe another time. Do it again. But then ask yourself, who was impacted by this? Because sometimes shame and guilt come together. Sometimes something you've done you feel ashamed of, but then you also feel guilty about the impact on another person. So write down what it is that you feel shame and guilt about, and then write down next to it in another column, everyone that's involved. Anyone that you think is any way affected by a loss without a gain, or a negative without a positive, or a pain without a pleasure, or a disadvantage without an advantage, and make a list of those next to it. So you write down the shame, and then you write down next to it all the people that you believe have been affected by it. Now, the only reason you're feeling ashamed, and I've been in the Breakthrough Experience, I've cleared shame and guilt for people for decades now. And it's not that difficult, really. It's something that I can show you in the Breakthrough Experience very quickly on how to do it. I mean, there's some steps involved, more than I can do in this presentation, but at least I can start you on this. But go in there and actually make a list of all the people that are being affected by it, and then start listing how did it serve them? How did it benefit them? What were the upsides? What were the things they gained? What were the advantages they received? At first, you're going to think there aren't any. Well, then you're going to store that shame. Your amygdala is going to just keep that in the hippocampus, and it's going to be stored there, and it's going to be running your subconscious mind, and you're going to feel guilty. And the next time you see them, it's going to be affecting your dynamic with them. You're going to be storing it. It's going to affect your sales and your presentations and all that other stuff until you clear it. There's absolutely no reason why it can't be cleared. So you go to that moment, where and when you did the behavior that you feel ashamed or guilty about. You identify the individuals of who you actually were affecting. And these could be people you were directly doing something to, or maybe bystanders. Because sometimes we have shame and guilt not by the individuals we do an action to, but the idea that we did it in front of somebody that we feel humbled by, we feel humiliated by. So anybody who is involved, you write down, how did it serve them? How is it an advantage to them? How did it give them an upside, a positive? And at first you're going to think there isn't any, and that's why you're going to store that shame, that guilt. But once you stop and look at how it helps them in all areas of their life, spiritually, intellectually, business, financial, family, social, physical. In the breakthrough experience, I actually take you through methodically exactly how to do this process. And we actually make you do it step by step. And I ask people at the end of the breakthrough experience, well, at the end of this method, I call it the Demartini method, how many of you now have dissolved your shame and guilt? Every hand goes up. And they go, well, how long has that been sitting there? Days, weeks, months, years, decades. It's stored there until you balance it. As long as you have an assumption that there's been more drawbacks and benefits to somebody, you're going to carry it. And it's going to affect your behavior and your self-worth and your immune system. It's going to help you self-attack yourself, beat yourself up, think there's something wrong with you. But really, the truth is, whatever you've done has two sides. Just like when somebody's done something to you, you think it's terrible, and you want to do a false attribution bias and blame them for it. And then you find out, oh my God, I had a consult with a gentleman just recently that had this event occur in his life, and he thought, it's terrible what this person had done. And then I said, well, what were the benefits to it? And he goes, well, there wasn't any. I said, well, look again. And within 5 or 10 minutes, he started stacking up the benefits. And the thing he thought was so terrible, he was actually grateful for. And then I said, where have you done that in your life? Oh, I've never done that. And then he went and looked, and he found, well, I have done that. I said, well, whoever you've done it to, if you thought what they did was terrible, is it possible you thought what you did was the same, was terrible? And he goes, I guess I did. Do you feel guilty about it? Yes. Well, how did it benefit those people? Well, it didn't. How did it? Look again. And I made him look again and again and again and again and again and again until we got about 11 different benefits, 12 different benefits. And all of a sudden he's going, I'm not feeling guilty about that. And I'm not angry at the person. Do you know that the reason why we resent other people is it because it reminds us of things we feel ashamed of in ourselves? So if we'd like to have a more loving and appreciative relationship with other people, by clearing our shames and guilts inside us, it helps us not react to them when they remind us of what we're feeling ashamed of. It's an old biblical statement in Romans 2, I believe, that whatever we judge in others, we do the same. And it's true. I've proven that in the breakthrough experience for all these years. Thousands and thousands of people have gone through it and proven that to themselves. Whatever you see in other people that you resent, you've done inside your life, but you just feel ashamed and guilt about it, and they're reminding you of it. And if I clear the shame and guilt, you're not even angry at them anymore. You realize that they were your teachers brought into your life to help you clear your own shame and guilt. So take the time to identify, how did it serve the people who are involved? And sometimes these are real and sometimes these are virtual. I had a very religious person there who actually believed that their anthropomorphic deity that they were believing in was omnipresent and was omniscient and was watching them, and they did a behavior that they were ashamed of, and they felt that that person was affected by it, this artificial God that they made in their mind. It was only fabricated in their own mind from their instructions from their childhood. And they said, well, how did it benefit God? And well, I don't know. Well, just look. How could it benefit to actually be seen as a human being? And believe it or not, it was the shame and guilt just melted away because this whole thing was fabricated in their own mind. And just as it can be created in your own mind, it can be eliminated in your own mind. It's all the ratio of perception. All of the emotions that we have, shame, guilt, pride, self-righteousness, are all ratios of perceptions. If we balance out the ratios of perceptions, we change the whole feeling and dynamic. I do it every weekend in the breakthrough experience. I've had people that have stored stuff that they feel ashamed of or guilty about or proud of and self-righteous about. And we've neutralized that because whenever you're proud or shamed, you're not authentic. The shame is a self-minimizing position. It's a persona, a mask we wear when we assume that there's more drawbacks and benefits to something we've done. And pride is an assumption in the other direction. We saw more benefits and drawbacks. The truth is there's both sides, and there's two sides, and everything has a pair of opposites. So if we don't take the time to balance our equation, we're going to store those, be inauthentic. It's going to affect us narcissistically when we're proud and altruistically when we're shamed. Whenever we minimize ourselves, we sacrifice for others. When we exaggerate ourselves, we sacrifice others for us, both of which are futile and non-sustainable relationship dynamics. So take the time to go through and actually identify what specific trait you've done or trait you haven't done that you feel shame and guilt about. Write down all the people that you believe were affected by it and start stacking up the other side, the unconscious side. See, when you are infatuated with somebody, you're conscious the upsides and unconscious the downsides. When you're resentful to somebody, you're conscious the downsides, unconscious the upsides. When you're proud, you're conscious of your upsides and not your downsides. When you're shamed, you're conscious of your downsides and not your upsides. If you go and balance it out by asking where's the other side and hold yourself accountable by looking and don't speculate, don't write any speculations down. Only write down what's fact and go and look for the facts. And the facts will show you that there's upsides to whatever you've done. They've gained insight. Maybe they became more independent. Maybe they became more driven. Maybe they're resourceful, less obligated to you, maybe less dependent on you. Maybe they broke their fantasy of you. Maybe they had unrealistic expectations. They got grounded. Maybe they got to realize that you're not this one-sided individual. Or maybe they initiated a reaction to initiate your reaction. They did something and now they learned, hey, that's not the way to get that type of response. Whatever it is, there's something that they can gain by it. And if you identify what they are and clear it, you don't have to carry around the shame and guilt. And there's absolutely no reason that it's essential. There's no biological necessity for carrying around shame and guilt. We're taught sometimes from our mothers and fathers and preachers and teachers or whatever about these moral hypocrisies about how we're supposed to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, positive, never negative, peaceful, never wrathful. All these one-sided illusions that don't exist. They're fantasies. And they keep people disempowered. Because the second you set up a fantasy of a one-sided outcome and then you don't live up to it, you beat yourself up and then you feel ashamed because now you're expecting yourself to be one-sided perfection. The real perfection in your life is when you have embraced both sides of your life. I'm not here to try to get rid of half of my life or get rid of half of your life. And by the way, if you're in a relationship, would you agree you don't want somebody to try to get rid of half of you? They're not going to. It's futile, waste of time. But if people project their values onto you and expect you to live in their values or expect you to be one-sided, they're going to end up having a feeling that you're not living up to their expectations and they're not going to appreciate it. So they're under a delusion of one-sidedness, but don't fall for that. Don't fall for the moral hypocrisies of one-sided living when it can't be done. You know, I broke that illusion 39 years ago and it liberated me from a tremendous amount of unrealistic expectation of myself, which is what is leading to the shame and guilt. Imagine if you're thinking you're always supposed to be never nice and never mean, always kind, never cruel, only to one side. And then have yourself having both sides. When you feel supported, you're nice. When you feel challenged, you can be mean. If all of a sudden you're only supposed to be one side, you feel shame and guilt when you're the other side. Only because of the moral hypocrisy that you've injected into your life. And now you have this false expectation on yourself. So a lot of the shame and guilt are there because you have this expectation to be one-sided and you've been told that that's what perfect is. The perfection of yourself is all that, the whole, not the part, the whole balance of both sides. There's a time for this. I think it was Ecclesiastes in biblical writings. There's a time for peace, a time for war, a time for sowing, a time for renting, a time for everything under the sun. Wisdom is embracing both sides of your life. So all I'm doing is helping you break through your moral hypocrisies and helping you see that there's two sides to things and allow you to embrace both sides so you're not carrying around shame and guilt or pride and you're not carrying around infatuations or resentments, both of which undermine your power. So take the time to make a list of everything you've been judging yourself about that's probably coming from some moral hypocrisy, and then have false expectations, unrealistic expectation of yourself. Then go and write down who it is that's affected, real or virtual, and then go and find out how did it benefit them. And don't stop until you got a tear of gratitude in yourself and liberate yourself from that. That's why I take people through the breakthrough experience and give them step-by-step processes of all the components. There's more components, but that's the first one. And there's more components to a point where there's just nothing but a deep appreciation and love with tears in your eyes of gratitude for yourself. And you realize you've been carrying around baggage, misperceived baggage in your mind unnecessarily, and it can be liberated with the quality questions. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask the questions that balance out the equation, you don't have to carry around the shame and guilt and all those things that are stored in your subconscious mind. So again, make a list of all the people that has been affected from all the things you felt ashamed and guilty about. And the way you know you've cleared it is when you can stand in front of the mirror and at the end of it, you can say thank you to yourself. And if all of a sudden somebody was to find out about what you did, you wouldn't have a reaction. You could be able to be open and say, I did this, and this is how it served people. And I did this, and this is what I learned. And you can be open and love all parts of yourself and not try to get rid of half of yourself and not have to hide some part of yourself and feel ashamed about it. Not needed to do that. I've seen people that have been carrying around guilt and shame about stuff that's pretty common stuff, that they thought that they were somehow different. But if you actually find it, we're all human. We all do all kinds of things. And to sit down and feel shame and guilt about some of the things we do is just unnecessary. So take the time to do what I just asked, and just know that if you do that, you'll lighten the load, lift up your spirits a bit and appreciate your life. And then imagine if you were to get that done, if you came to the breakthrough experience where I really gave and impacted. I teach in the breakthrough experience the Demartini method. And in a portion of the Demartini method, we cover these topics. And in the process of doing that, we clear that and show them how to clear that and clear them pride and shame and infatuation, resentments and grief and any emotion that's stopping people from doing something extraordinary with their life, that's holding them back from being grateful, loving, inspired, enthused, certain, and present, which I call the transcendentals. If you'd like to know how to clear all that so you don't have to be carrying around this baggage and not have to be carrying around the shame and guilt which is holding you back and possibly affecting your economics and your health, etc., come to the breakthrough experience so I can show you more. I'm just giving you a tiny portion of it today, but I'm certain I've watched thousands of people's lives who've been carrying around unnecessary shame and guilt clear it, and the same for pride and all these other emotions. So take advantage of the breakthrough experience so I can help you help other people. And if you got something out of this presentation today, please click the like button. That way I can help get this out to more people. Because there's probably a lot of people out there that you may know or other people may know that just might be carrying around unnecessary shame and guilt. And also, please subscribe and hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified when all of a sudden we're having new presentations coming out. You'll be notified so you can grab a hold of them. And I just want to say thank you for being with me today, and I look forward to seeing you on our next presentation.